It's a significant moment when your family marries into a new circle. But becoming part of the House of Windsor is an altogether different matter.
It must be an overwhelming sensation to know that you and your child are going to be forever associated with royalty.
What is it like to suddenly find your family intimately within the royal orbit? Is it a dream?
It was a total shock when it came.
Or a royal nightmare?
And I suppose in love. Whatever in love means.
Outsiders have struggled to do well when they enter the royal family.
You ever have disagreements about things?
Oh, yes.
This is the inside story of when the Middletons met the monarchy, when suburbia met the royal firm, told by palace insiders.
I was on duty. There was a girl standing on her own. This lady was Kate Middleton.
Happy birthday, Kate.
And family friends.
There was intense press pressure. Some of the tabloids had come in and said, is it true Carol drives through the village at 50 miles an hour?
Middle-class commoners thrust into the heart of the royal family.
You're not filming this, are you?
What really happened behind closed doors when the party planners went to the palace?
I'd heard that Camilla wasn't very keen on Catherine.
Navigating the frictions within the royal family itself.
I suppose there is a little tension sometimes between who gets to see the grandkids most.
You know what? I'm jealous. How about me?
Does he look like you or Catherine? It's got her looks, thankfully.
How did the Middletons adapt when they met the House of Windsor?
She's realised that she is going to have to listen to those that have come before her in order to win, and she gets it.
And how will they help shape the future of the royal family?
It will be the Middletons who have the influence, because the royal family is stuck in its ways.
One day, Prince George will be King George VII, descended from a family of miners.
The Duke and Duchess of Cambridge are one of the most famous couples on the planet. Despite their very different family backgrounds, Kate started dating William while studying art history at the University of St Andrews. Little did she know this relationship would change her family's life forever.
They are incredibly popular as young members of the royal family on whom an awful lot of responsibility has been placed.
As a commoner, born into a middle-class home counties English family, Kate's integration into the royal family hasn't been easy.
They started dating, but very quietly. No one knew very much about it, only their closest circle of friends. There's talk that when Prince Charles was younger, that his girlfriends used to call him Sir. I can't imagine knowing William that would be anything like that.
Here we have the monarchy. It has its own peculiar rules and protocol which stretch back hundreds of years. Now, can you imagine stepping into that world and trying to integrate yourself? That is a very steep learning curve.
When Kate's parents, Michael and Carol Middleton, were invited to an intimate lunch to meet the Queen for the first time, all eyes were on Windsor Castle.
It must have been quite awesome to be going through those doors of the ancient medieval castle, these huge buildings that you know are steeped in history, where terribly important people live.
It was a personal invite from the monarch and a momentous moment for the Middletons.
People act really weird sometimes when they're meeting the Queen. The hands get fidgety, or they start sweating, or start mumbling.
In meeting the monarch, the Middletons needed to navigate the royal rules very carefully. Grant Harold spent 7 years as a butler in the royal household.
One of my jobs was, when people came to meet the royals, was to make sure that they were relaxed, calm, if they wanted any advice or guidance. And that's everything from the gentlemen do a neck bow, not a waist bow, and ladies do a curtsy, not too low down, because otherwise you might not come back up.
I can just imagine Carol going through her wardrobe and trying to choose the perfect gown. I would say that always err on the side of grace and elegance. Preferably a long sleeve. For a gentleman, not too many stripes, not too much fuss.
The purpose of the meeting was really to put them at their ease, but it must be quite an intimidating moment for Carol Middleton, whose great-great-grandfather had been a coal miner in Durham.
Carol apparently said, "Pleased to meet you," when she'd been told to say, "How'd you do?" In the tension of the moment, you forget.
I'm told that the lunch at Windsor Castle went very well. It went on for an hour and a half, which is quite long, actually, by Queen's standards.
John Haley has known the Middletons for over 20 years. They struck up a friendship when the family became regulars at his pub, not far from their home in the Berkshire village of Bucklebury.
We socialised with them, got invited to their house, which was very nice. Mike and Carol got strong personalities. They can get on with anybody. They're so natural, so relaxed, very family-orientated. They just were liked by everybody.
Historically, the in-laws have pretty much become outlaws, but I think Kate made it very clear to William she wasn't going to lose that close connection that she enjoyed with her own family.
They're so isolated from ordinary family life, so there's an enormous gulf. We've seen in the past with people joining the royal family, it can be devastating.
The backgrounds of Carol and Michael Middleton are worlds apart from the Windsors.
Carol was brought up in the early part of her life in a council flat in an impecunious part of West London. You don't have to go back too far in the generations and you reach the Durham connection. For many generations, her family were coal miners.
There have been lots of reports about Carol's very humble upbringings. She was kind of a grafter who moved up the ranks and became a flight attendant at British Airways.
Michael comes from rather slightly grander stock. His family hail from Yorkshire, and they had made a fair bit of money. He became flight dispatcher for British Airways, and do you know what? They ran into one another, and love blossomed.
The Middletons moved to Bucklebury in 1995. Kate and her younger siblings, Pippa and James, enjoyed an idyllic childhood.
Bucklebury is a very quaint little village, as you imagine in an Agatha Christie story. There's a village green, a little butcher's, a newsagent's, little local pub.
Bucklebury is quite a mixture of people. You've got some fabulously wealthy people, lovely big houses. They're a very close-knit community, and they all stand by each other.
The Middleton family are incredibly close. Pippa Middleton is Kate's best friend. They were brought up together. There's only a year or two gap between them. Kate, Pippa and James were brought up impeccably. Kate is very similar to her father. She is more thoughtful and more discreet, perhaps, than Pippa, and quieter. Personally, I think that Pippa is more like her mother. She's very outgoing, very sociable, loves partying.
Mike and Carol, they're strong people, very loyal, down-to-earth, hard-working couple. The kids would come in and play in the garden, just like any other family.
Carol set up her party pieces enterprise on the kitchen table. Michael then came into the business with her, and they turned it into a very successful party paraphernalia business.
They're very ambitious. Carol has been said to be a perfectionist, and it certainly paid off for the Middleton family.
A wealth of opportunities opened up for the Middleton children, and all three were privately educated. At the age of 14, Kate was sent to the prestigious Marlborough College, where fees can hit almost £40,000 a year.
Carol was determined that they would go to very good private schools. She wanted her daughters to make the sort of connections with the right sort of people.
Pippa followed Kate to Marlborough College. The two of them were very competitive with one another. I think, if anything, Pippa became the better sportswoman. She went to Edinburgh, where she read English.
At St Andrews University, Kate and William kept their burgeoning relationship very quiet.
The press were sniffing around and saying, is there something going on here? But they would always say, no, we're just all housemates, you know how it is at university, load of students.
And the rest of the Middletons treated the news with the utmost discretion.
I've interviewed several members of the family over the years, and when William and Kate began dating, Carol actually phoned members of the family to tell them to be on their guard.
I mean, they must have been dying to tell people, do you know, our daughter is dating Prince William. But I think they kept it to a very tight circle.
As William and Kate's relationship blossomed, William visited the Middleton family home in Bucklebury.
I think that there are people that would say, we take us as we are. This is our house, our home, and you're invited into it. But I don't think they would necessarily then think they've got to put on a show.
William and Carol struck a very close bond very early on. He would definitely have been happy to have a mother figure like Carol, who was very nurturing and reliable and trustworthy.
The Bucklebury locals made William feel very much at home.
The very first time actually Prince William came in, the first thing he was looking for was me to be an actor. So we then made sure that we were always covering the stock.
And the family made a visit to the local pub.
2 tables were booked this particular evening by Carol. The second table was for his security. Kate walked straight in. She said, "Hi, John, how are you?" I said, "I'm fine, thank you." She said, "Oh, this is William, John." And shook hands, "Nice to meet you." And it was just so relaxed. They were in the conservatory having a meal, and the press came in the front, but they didn't even know they were there.
A world away from the village of Bucklebury, however, William was planning the introduction of Kate to his family, and importantly, his father.
When Catherine was taken to Highgrove, she would have been prepped by William. Charles and Catherine went for a walk in the garden on their own for a chat. They got on well, but Charles is, someone slightly unkindly put it, is a dry old stick. I think William would have said, look, he's a lovely man, but, you know, he's not the life and soul.
I think that he would have admired the fact that Catherine was quite a mature, well-spoken, and quite a confident girl, actually.
Charles really made a point of welcoming Kate into the family from quite an early stage. She was often invited for shooting weekends up at Burke Hall. It's Charles who largely taught Kate to stalk.
Most of the royal family quite like playing games. They play quite silly games sometimes after dinner. I think she would have found plenty to enjoy with them.
She was taken to Highgrove, to Sandringham. She was taken into these scenarios to judge whether or not she was suited to it, whether she could handle it, whether she hated it. There were so many lessons of Princess Diana because no one wanted another bride who was miserable.
I'd heard that Camilla wasn't very keen on Catherine. She didn't shoot. She's not interested in horses particularly. There was too much of a gap and that William would feel it. But I think it's true to say Camilla later warmed to Catherine and recognised her solid virtues.
Harry took some winning over. I think sometimes he felt that Kate was a bit straight and kept his brother a bit too much on the straight and narrow. And I do remember Harry telling one of their friends, "Oh, he's become so boring." But actually, he grew to love Kate and to see her as the sister, really, that he's never had.
Catherine Middleton.
After graduating from St Andrews University with a 2-1, Kate moved into her parents' flat in London. But she was soon hit with the harsh reality of being the girlfriend of the future monarch, catapulted into the centre of a media frenzy.
Suddenly, overnight, everybody wants a piece of you. Now, psychologically, that can have a hugely stressful impact. In fact, some people who've become famous overnight describe it as being very traumatizing.
She'd be surrounded by news crews, 20 cameramen. It's pretty tough, but she didn't complain about it publicly.
Kate was advised to watch a film of how Diana dealt with the press. That might have been a salutary lesson for Catherine. You've got to accept that early on, you're not going to like it.
The Middletons are now thrown firmly into the spotlight. If you come from a very tight, close family unit, suddenly exposing all the rest of the members to becoming, you know, public fodder can be immensely painful.
Some of the tabloids had come in and said, is it true Carol drives through the village at 50 miles an hour? Well, you know, it's totally untrue. Mike and Carol got strong personalities, so they was able to deal with this. I noticed the odd time they bumped into a reporter in the pub, they would just say, I'm sorry, we don't talk to the press.
Carol and Michael were invited to William's passing out ceremony at Sandhurst. Carol got some very unfair criticism for chewing gum in public. In fact, it was Nicorette, because she'd given up smoking. I'm sure Carol must have been mortified by the headlines.
She got a lot of flack for it. It's got to be quite humiliating. She bore it with good grace. She didn't say anything about it.
When William and Kate split for a period in 2007, the Middleton family were faced with negative headlines.
William made the call and said that I think it's the right person at the wrong time type call. What was quite difficult was that he was not only splitting from Catherine, he was splitting from her family, and he'd become very close to them.
Carol Middleton in particular was a target of the tabloid press.
Snide remarks. She was too pushy. Rumours that Carol and Catherine had a plan to almost ambush William at St Andrews. None of these have been proved to be true.
She had to take some stick over her mum being an air stewardess, you know, cross-deck doors to manual was said a few times, I think. This is a woman that built a very, very successful business, so I don't think she really gave two hoots about it, from what I understand.
William was very upset, and he telephoned the Middletons very quickly to say that the criticisms had not come from him or any of the royals.
You could say they were almost royal in the way they dealt with all the press attention, actually. They're quite savvy, the Middletons. They just put up and shut up, and that was a very sound strategy.
On nights out in London, newly single Kate was seen to be sporting an adventurous style.
It was Carol who said to Kate, you go and show him what he's missing. Carol knew that her daughter was perfect future queen material.
If this was indeed a plan cooked up by Carol Middleton, it certainly worked. Around 10 weeks later, the relationship was back on.
I was so excited that they were actually back together. One of my favourite memories was Prince Charles's birthday. There was a girl standing on her own, but nobody was speaking to her. This lady was Kate Middleton. I felt sorry, so I walked over to her and started chatting to her. The fact they just got back together, and there might have been that thing where people didn't really know what to kind of say.
Despite the press intrusion, William and Kate's relationship was seemingly stronger than ever. Kate was finally introduced to the most revered royal relative of them all, the Queen. In 2008, Kate attended the wedding of Peter Phillips and Autumn Kelly at St George's Chapel in Windsor.
William wasn't able to go to that wedding. For Catherine to attend on her own was really quite significant.
I can only imagine it would have been a roller coaster of emotions and a desperate need to want to get it right, and also to impress the Queen, the monarch, but also this is her boyfriend's grandma.
But it was a private moment when Kate finally met the head of the House of Windsor.
It would have been carefully choreographed by royal advisors. She would have been told, you know, just to wait for the Queen, and the Queen would have had someone there to point out Catherine.
At the reception, the Queen came over and spoke to Catherine, and reportedly, you know, they had a little chat. It was very pleasant. And the Queen let it be known that she'd been wanting to meet Catherine for a long time.
I'm sure that the Queen and Kate found loads to talk about. Kate studied history of art at university, and the Queen obviously has an extensive collection of fine paintings, and they both adore the countryside.
You see, the thing about Kate, she just has this ability. I think it's partly being confident, being very smiley, but crucially, not being embarrassed about who she is. The Queen would have warmed to that.
Despite establishing her place within the Windsor inner circles, 2 years later, there was still no sign of an engagement ring. It's rumoured Carol Middleton took the delicate matter of her daughter's future into her own hands.
She sat down with William and just said to him, is this going to end in a marriage? She was close enough to be able to do that. William gave his assurance that, he was going to make an honest woman of Kate. He wasn't going to leave her on the shelf.
True to his word, in October 2010, William finally asked Kate to marry him.
They met at university. They will one day be king and queen.
And when the newly engaged couple appeared in their first joint TV interview, Kate's family were at the forefront of William's mind.
Mike and Carol have only been, really sort of loving and caring and really fun, and have been really welcoming towards me, so I felt really part of the family.
For William, what I noticed when he talks about the Middleton family, he goes from clasped hands to open palms and gets very animated. He's telling you, I feel very positively about these people.
I really didn't expect it at all. I thought he might have sort of maybe thought about it, but no. It was a total shock when it came, and very excited.
The excitement about the royal engagement swept the world, and nowhere more so than the Middletons' home village of Bucklebury.
The evening after, there was a massive party. They all come in the pub. I remember Mike got up and gave a speech and thanked everyone and all his friends and, being good with the family. And we all, really celebrated the news.
In a move breaking with royal precedent, the Middletons held a press conference outside the family home.
It doesn't look too cheesy, does it? No, you sure?
You're not filming this, are you? Michael and Carol came out looking, to their credit, I think, not dressed up to the nines, looking very relaxed, quite informal. And I think everyone took to them then and thought, oh, they're quite ordinary folk, good for them. They were naturals, actually, in front of the camera.
They make a lovely couple. They're great fun to be with, and we've had a lot of laughs together.
It was so natural for Mike to be able to give this speech and speak to the press from all over the world. And I remember congratulating Mike when I saw him next a few days later.
Was it all right?
Don't need to retake.
The Middletons are actually the ultimate professionals when it comes to being public figures, handling it with confidence and with poise and just getting that note right.
A sweet interview, Carol, as she disappeared into the distance, she flicked her hair back and went, crumbs. Goodness, as if, how extraordinary to be in such an amazing position.
Okay.
Just a month after getting engaged, William and Kate announced the date of their wedding as the 29th of April 2011.
We saw William and Kate after the announcement of the engagement. As I said, congratulations, it's great news, and I'm sure you'll have a fabulous life together.
I think what people might be surprised to learn is that actually, until that engagement was official, Kate really had no training whatsoever. William had his private office, William had the palace machine behind him.
Clearly everything changed once they became engaged, because everything is sort of scaled up to another level. From then on, she had full-time police protection, which made a huge difference in terms of keeping the paparazzi at bay. And of course, she had to start beginning to plan on what life within the royal family was going to be like.
The Queen certainly played a role in preparing Catherine to marry William, but not in any sort of formal sense. She would have just given her odd bits of advice, just to encourage her.
The reality is, the Queen lets members of the royal family find their own way, and that's the way she did it. There wouldn't be some sort of, blackboard up, this is how you become a royal wife.
Catherine will have been given advice and some gentle tutoring by courtiers within the royal household. It was all done internally, sort of clothes to wear for what occasion, and how to interact with the public.
It wasn't only Kate that was prepared for life in the royal family. the Middletons themselves were also now to be at the heart of the monarchy.
For the royal family, they've been born and raised into it. They know the rules of engagement at big events like a royal wedding. For the Middleton family, I think it would only be fair to offer them guidance, support and help about protocol. Otherwise, the likelihood for making a mistake is pretty high.
The wider Middleton family would have been given some support, particularly mum and dad, so there'd be security checks and making sure they've got all the correct procedures in place for that.
Should be so proud now to know that he's in that position.
William sat down with them, he explained to them how things would change. He made sure that he was there for them. Carol had William's number in her phone, as did Michael, so that they could call him if they needed him.
I remember from a butler's point of view, when I joined, you're made aware from that day forward, your life is never going to be quite the same. So can you imagine when we're talking about Kate Middleton and her family marrying into the royal family? Of course, it is going to change their lives.
As Kate and her family adjusted to life in the royal firmament, plans for the wedding took shape.
I mean, this was not going to be just some ordinary family wedding because it involved the heir in line to the throne. It was going to be at one of the grandest churches in the land, at Westminster Abbey, and inevitably it meant that many of the preparations had to be taken out of the Middletons' hands and put in the hands of the royal household.
Weddings cause fights and rifts in the best of families. And so I'm sure there were some very fraught moments in the planning of William and Kate's wedding as well. The Middletons did spend a lot of money themselves, and with that money came control. She was able to express personal taste and judgment.
The thing about Catherine that works so well is that she does have her own mind. And she does like to make decisions about what she does and how she appears, but she does it within a framework that's acceptable to the royal family.
For a few of the Middleton family friends in Bucklebury, it meant an unexpected invite.
She said, "Oh, hi, John, this is Pippa." I said, "Oh, what can I do for you?" She said, "Kate's asked me to phone you and would like to know if you'd like to come to the wedding." It was just great of Kate to invite a couple of dozen friends from the area. It says something special about Kate because, she didn't want it just to be a royal wedding. She wanted her family there, her friends there.
And there was one member of the Middleton family in particular who had captured the press and public's imagination.
No one really knew who Pippa Middleton was, but my goodness, if you didn't know who she was before the royal wedding, you certainly knew who she was afterwards.
I think that dress certainly propelled her into the public domain, with many people discussing her look and her shape and so on.
It had a series of beautiful little satin buttons down the back, all the way down the back, in really rather a demure but undeniably sexy way. And it was Pippa's rear, which caught the attention of the media almost more than the royal bride.
These two families from very different worlds came together publicly for the first time as they stepped onto the balcony of Buckingham Palace.
Well, for William, I would have thought it was probably something that he was fine with because he's been doing it since he was a little kid. But I can imagine for Kate wandering out on the balcony and then you see this huge swathe of people. It must have looked magnificent.
For now, all eyes may have been on Kate and William, but after the wedding, attention quickly turned to Pippa once again.
She had become her royal hotness. And there was a brief spell when everything Pippa did almost eclipsed what her sister was doing. I think Pippa found that quite hard. I've met her once or twice, and she didn't seek this publicity, and she had no idea quite what it was going to do to her.
Pippa wasn't alone. For the entire Middleton family, their sudden elevation into the aristocracy brought with it a unique set of problems. Not least that they still had to earn a living.
The Middletons didn't seek the spotlight, but by their circumstance and, of course, who they were and who their daughter had married into, they were the subject of intense scrutiny. And unsurprisingly, their business was something that the press really pored over.
Carol set up the family business, a mail-order party supplies company called Party Pieces, in 1987.
Whenever a new line came on the Party Pieces website, people would be looking to see if that was slightly going to infringe royal protocol. Are they exploiting the royal connections by choosing things to sell?
It wasn't bad publicity for their company, but that's not their fault. They didn't choose their daughter's husband.
They're a hard-working family. They built up a very, very good business, and the press were being very unfair to them.
After her starring role in the wedding, Pippa Middleton was a particular source of fascination to the press and public, and potentially a flashpoint with the royals.
She, like Diana's brother Earl Spencer, came under the spotlight quite a lot. Who she was dating, how she was making her money, etc. Yeah, she became a hot property.
She really was one of the most sought-after socialites on the London party circuit. I mean, I remember being at events and Pippa turned up, the photographers would go crazy.
But with the eyes of the world and the royals upon her, she began to feel the pressure.
Once she was famous, one of the most famous people in the world, there were bound to be accusations that she was using her position as the sister of, the future Queen of England to further her commercial interests.
It was even alleged that Pippa was using her position in the royal orbit to her advantage.
Whether that was getting a deal with Waitrose, writing a party planning book, being on the top of the guest list for some of the biggest parties in London.
Pippa Middleton has had an interesting journey. We had the book on entertainment that was written, although the advance was huge, paid to Pippa and contained such fascinating insights, such as if you're going to host a stargazing party, it's best to do it at night.
I think it did get to the point, particularly for Pippa, where she was advised just to keep a lower profile. I think it did get to the point, certainly where at the palace, there was a level of concern about just how much exposure Pippa was getting. And I think at that point, a word was had, from Kate to her sister, just to say, look, it's in your best interest to just dial this down a little bit.
The youngest member of the Middleton family, James, wasn't immune to criticism either.
James was a very young man at the time his sister married, and of course, he had a lot of growing up to do.
There were some nude pictures that emerged of James Middleton, taken years before, but splashed across some of the papers. It must be very hard when you're just a private person going about your own life to find your past dragged up and your bins gone through and cameras trained on you when you least expected.
It was around James's business dealings that the scrutiny became most intense and potentially damaging to the family's new royal connection.
Of course, they're not royal, but they're still somehow connected. So for Pippa and James, every attempt they made to support themselves, to start a business, to write a book, to whatever it was going to be criticized heavily and scrutinized. So there were privileges and perks of being associated with the royals, but there was also a lot of pressure and scrutiny and negative headlines.
James is slightly younger, a few years younger than his sisters, and has been somewhat overshadowed by them, I think, but he is very close to them.
Very much a chip off the Middleton family block. He went to the same school as his sisters, and he went to Edinburgh University. He did not, however, complete his degree course, and he dropped out.
From a very early age, he wasn't particularly looking to go and make a career as a solicitor or something like that. He was looking to set up and run something himself.
James is probably most like Carol. He's very much an entrepreneur. It seemed that he was quite determined to follow in his entrepreneurial parents' footsteps and make something of his life.
He started up several businesses. One went bust, owing a great deal of money, so he was criticised for that.
Despite their rapid rise to royal circles, the Middletons held firm to the monarchy's mantra: never complain, never explain.
I think the Middletons have been exemplary, actually, in how they've conducted themselves since becoming part of the extended royal family, if you like. They have maintained absolutely the first rule, almost the only rule, which is to be discreet. They've just been in the background, supporting William, supporting Catherine. I think they've fitted in quietly and calmly and handled it all with immense aplomb.
Upon her wedding to Prince William in April 2011, Kate was no longer a Middleton. Catherine, Her Royal Highness, the Duchess of Cambridge, was now a Windsor, married into one of the most famous institutions in the world.
The amount of scrutiny that she felt beforehand was nothing compared to the amount of scrutiny that she would face the rest of her life.
A true baptism of fire for any royal is their first overseas engagement. And for Kate, just 2 months after her wedding to Prince William, she faced a daunting 9-day tour of Canada.
They don't get much sleep when they're doing those tours, but at the same time, they're really important that they do them. I once said to the Prince of Wales, "I hope you enjoy your vacation." And he's like, "It's not a vacation, it's a tour."
With over 1,300 journalists following Kate's every move, the eyes of the world were watching this new royal.
There was an extraordinary amount of pressure, and it was details like wearing something reflective of when Princess Diana was there, or wearing a brooch that the Queen herself wore when she was in Canada.
Please welcome the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge!
Despite wowing crowds overseas, back on home soil, Kate faced more pressure as she struggled to hone her royal skill set.
None of us really love public speaking, and it is, for a member of the royal family, a key part of the job description. Now, Catherine's first speech in public is slightly painful to watch because it's not terrible, but it's not great.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you. Thank you for not only accepting me as your patron, but thank you also for inviting me here today.
You can see that she was incredibly nervous. There's zero personality, but to be perfectly honest, for a royal speech, you're not massively meant to put personality in, but you can put a little bit more than what Catherine gave it.
It is a shining example of the support and the care that is delivered not just here, but in the children's hospice movement at large, up and down the country.
The first chapter of Kate's life as a Windsor had started with a whirlwind. And Kate was now faced with her first official royal Christmas at Sandringham.
What to give someone for Christmas is always a nightmare, isn't it? And what do you give the Queen? Catherine absolutely hit the nail on the head when she decided to give the Queen some homemade chutney. And I think the Queen would have absolutely loved that. And then she showed her sense of humour and her great relationship with Harry by giving him a grow-your-own girlfriend kit. And they would have loved that.
Kate had come a long way from her days as a student at St Andrews University. But had her meteoric rise affected the relationships within the monarchy?
You can't please everybody when you enter a new family. Now, if you think about Kate's position, she has been elevated in the pecking order of royalty, and she's now above Beatrice and Eugenie.
Less than a year after Kate married into the royal family, rumours of tensions within the palace began to gather momentum as Prince Charles looked to streamline the monarchy.
It's tricky for Beatrice and Eugenie, both born true royal princesses, to be bumped down the pecking order. Catherine was the scapegoat. She was the person who came in because she takes a senior position, has an effect on the rest of the family.
A striking image from the Queen's Diamond Jubilee showed a new-look monarchy, with a former Middleton just a year into her royal marriage at its front and centre.
It looks more modern, it looks more considered, but of course within the family it does cause these problems.
From humble beginnings, Kate was now at the forefront of a modern monarchy. But it would be another new addition to the firm that would set in motion one of the family's biggest fallouts.
Do you ever have disagreements about things?
Oh, yes. Healthy disagreement.
Okay, the last thing you disagreed on, how do you resolve it?
I can't remember, they come so thick and fast.
When Meghan joined the royal family, everyone assumed that she and Kate would become best buddies because they were both outsiders. But of course, they are naturally very different women.
Kate, in many ways, was sort of collateral damage in all this. She and Meghan didn't particularly get along. The relationship was not as straightforward as the wider world thought.
Despite the simmering tensions, the Middleton and Windsor bloodlines became inextricably linked on the 22nd of July 2013, when Prince George was born at St Mary's Hospital in Paddington.
Who does he look like? Does he look like you or Catherine?
It's got her looks, thankfully.
No. George was born, and it was special, and everyone was coming in saying, wow, we got the firstborn, a boy, and he's going to be a future king, and Carol is his grandma, and Mike, of course, his granddad.
He's absolutely beautiful. They're both doing really well, and we're so thrilled.
Kate and William came to visit the Middletons. I was invited round for a glass of wine, and we met, and that was a special time. I'm not good with babies, really, but it was good to be able to meet the future king.
And within 5 years, Kate and William's brood had grown with the arrival of Princess Charlotte and Prince Louis. One future king and his 2 younger siblings. But who will have the greatest say in their future?
Oh, how's that?
I suspect everyone thinks that in terms of the children, the royal family will inevitably have the most influence. But that's entirely wrong. It will be the Middletons who have the influence because the royal family is too formal, it's too stuck in its ways.
I think there's going to be a modification of the royal upbringing, which is in part just because we're living in different days, but also because Kate had a very sensible upper middle class upbringing, and she'll want her boys to experience some of that.
Regardless of his upbringing, Prince George, along with siblings Charlotte and Louis, will have an undeniable date with destiny.
One day, Prince George will be King George VII. And it's amazing to think that he is descended from a family of miners in County Durham.
Since their introduction to the royal firm almost 20 years ago, the Middleton family have succeeded where many others have fallen short.
The village is very proud of Kate. Mike and Carol have conducted her so well, considering the pressure they had on them. Not many people could have done that. To integrate with the royal family the way they have, I think they've done an absolutely great job.
I think one of the Middletons' great strengths is they're a very close family and they support one another and they can talk to one another. They just quietly get on with their lives, and that's exactly what you need to do when you're associated with royalty. Don't draw attention to yourselves.
You couldn't have picked a more perfect family to marry into the royals than the Middletons.
The relationship between the Markles and the Windsors seemed like a fairy tale. But is it now over?
Outsiders have struggled to do well when they enter the royal family.
Do you ever have disagreements about things?
Oh, yes.
The inside story of when Hollywood glamour met the establishment.
She was ready to do what it takes
to be a wife for Harry and to be a member of the royal family that, that the country can be proud of.
For me, it's an added member of the family.
I think Meghan's Hollywood background would have hit the royal family like a hurricane.
Harry and Meghan were intent on doing things their own way.
The Sussexes are isolated from what everything the royal family means, and that puts the royal family at peril.
And now seemingly outside royal life.
The Queen's statement was a clean cut, you're out. In other words, you're fired.
Would Harry and Meghan's groundbreaking interview with Oprah become the final chapter in their battle with the monarchy?
Prince Harry and Meghan will give their first interview to Meghan's friend Oprah Winfrey. The $6 million question, though, is just how far Meghan is going to go.
I expect this interview not only to reverberate through the United States and England, but to rock the establishment at its very core.
It had the potential to be so much better than, in fact, it turned out to be.
I did not have any understanding of just what it would be like.
Harry and Meghan are one of the most talked about couples on the planet. They've settled into their new lives away from the royal family, having swapped the regal backdrop of Windsor for the luxurious Hollywood Hills, in a move that echoes Edward VIII's infamous abdication.
Quite a lot of us thought back to the abdication crisis in the 1930s when Wallis Simpson, a twice divorced woman, fell in love with a king, and that king, Edward VIII, had to give up his throne in order to marry the woman he loved. Harry and Meghan had to divorce themselves from the royal family, just as Wallis and Edward had to divorce themselves from the monarchy in order to continue their relationship.
Now, with the tell-all Oprah Winfrey interview, are Harry and Meghan distancing themselves from, and even setting themselves against, the Windsors?
Strikes me that they feel that they can continue to control media coverage of them, control the way their image is portrayed. Yeah, we'd all like to do that.
What will the future hold for Harry and Meghan and the monarchy? In December 2017, Meghan Markle made history as she became the first royal fiancée to spend Christmas with the Queen.
Talk about a baptism of fire. Here was a rare exception being made. Kate Middleton was not invited as William's girlfriend to spend Christmas at Sandringham with the royals, but here was Meghan doing just that.
The Queen is very strict when it comes to family, and so to be invited was quite a significant thing. I'm sure Meghan Markle was absolutely terrified.
Although she had only met Harry the year before, Meghan was being fast-tracked into royal life.
This extraordinary special treatment could have possibly annoyed other members of the family. Perhaps Andrew and Sarah, because Sarah Ferguson had famously been not invited to spend Christmas there when her daughters and ex-husband were there.
Maybe a few people might have felt that their noses were put out of joint because they've had to work so hard with the protocol and the rules and the regulations, and here enters Meghan and is straight into Sandringham. I think it would have been a very diplomatic line that she would have had to walk.
Despite the huge pressures of a first Christmas with the in-laws, being face-to-face with senior royals was a perfect opportunity to charm the firm.
I'm sure it must have been pretty daunting, actually, for Meghan to rock up at Sandringham for Christmas with the Queen. What do you give the Queen? You know, what do you give your prospective father-in-law, you know, Charles? I mean, it must have been frightfully difficult.
The royal family have this tradition of not giving each other expensive gifts. In fact, the cheaper the gift, the better it is. Harry once gave his grandmother, you know, a pair of rubber gloves for doing the dishes. I mean, really quite bizarre presents. Meghan would have found that as extraordinary as a certain Diana Spencer did at her first Christmas by buying lavish gifts for her in-laws. She never made that mistake again.
Meghan played a blinder on that first Christmas. She got a toy, a singing hamster for the Queen, and apparently she loved it, and so did the corgis.
Despite winning over the Queen, Meghan's first royal Christmas wasn't completely free from controversy. After the festivities, a remark from Prince Harry on live radio was said to cause tensions between Meghan and her own family.
Harry was guest editing the Today programme on Radio 4 shortly afterwards, and he said they'd had a lot of fun at Christmas. And then he made a rather unfortunate remark. He said, I suppose it's the family she never had, meaning Meghan. Well, that went down like a lead balloon with the Markle family, obviously, and it's a remark they've never forgotten.
The family Meghan was joining was a far cry from the world in which she grew up. It was against the golden backdrop of Hollywood that Meghan's parents, Doria Ragland and Thomas Markle, first met.
Thomas went into the entertainment industry and became a lighting director. And it was when he was doing that job on the show General Hospital, a big show, that he met Doria, who was training at that time as a makeup artist. She was 12 years younger than him, but they fell in love and got married, and Meghan came along a couple of years later.
Thomas had been married before, and he had 2 children, much older than Meghan, from his first marriage. Thomas Jr. and Samantha, her 2 half-siblings, they weren't close to her. She was not close to them.
Despite her parents divorcing when she was young, Meghan enjoyed a supportive upbringing with both Doria and Thomas.
She hung around the studios where her father was the lighting director. It must have been really exciting, and she certainly got the bug.
Her first big break came with Suits, when she got the plum role of Rachel that everybody fell in love with. Rachel's character was very sexy, she was savvy, she was ambitious. It's actually not dissimilar to Meghan Markle herself.
Whilst Meghan was being thrust into the limelight, Prince Harry, a young officer in the British Army, was trying to escape it.
What do you think the public perception of Harry is?
I don't know, it fluctuates. It depends on what the media want to write, I suppose. But they're 2 very different things, what the public think and what the media think.
The British public have always had a huge amount of affection for Prince Harry, but certainly the press have had quite a love-hate relationship with him. He was seen as a bit directionless. He was seen as a bit of a party boy. He liked having a good time.
Despite being labelled a party prince, as he entered his 30s, Harry proved that he still had an important role to play within his family.
He created some wonderful initiatives, the Invictus Games, which was really his baby. He also worked on Heads Together, taking away some of the stigma surrounding mental health and mental health issues, being very open and honest about his own struggles, which was incredibly brave. And Harry was, at that time, arguably the most popular royal.
In 2016, Meghan touched down in London. The last thing she would have expected was a blind date with the 5th in line to the throne.
It's a lot easier if you have a boyfriend that understands the press and understands fame. And she definitely got that with Prince Harry. You couldn't meet a more famous man in all the world than Prince Harry.
Buckingham Palace proudly announce the engagement of Prince Harry and Meghan Markle. God save the Queen!
At the end of November 2017, news of Harry and Meghan's engagement emerged from the palace.
Congratulations from all of us. How are you both feeling?
Yeah, thrilled. Very glad it's not raining as well.
There was immediate analysis and commentary about the fact that the royal family was going to welcome in a woman of mixed heritage, an American woman, and a woman who was divorced.
2 completely different families were to be joined together. But behind the scenes, tensions had already emerged.
In my opinion, the engagement interview is when things really started to sour.
You met each other's families, I imagine. Yes, his family's been so welcoming.
And Meghan, your parents, do you think, very happy for you, obviously. Do you think they have worried at all about the scale of what you're getting into?
Well, I'm sure at the onset, both my parents and my close friends were concerned. I did not have any understanding of just what it would be like.
The year before their engagement announcement, Meghan had landed in the UK to promote her latest season of Suits.
Meghan and Harry were set up on a blind date by a mutual friend. They immediately clicked. Harry actually said it was like love at first sight. She was so open and he thought she was so sweet. And they just got on like a house on fire.
Oh, yay! Thank you for watching. Hi there, how are you?
I'm Gerard.
Nice to meet you.
Very few people knew the couple were dating, but Meghan let her mother Doria in on the secret.
Any young man wants to make a very good impression, and I don't think Harry was any different. So when they met in LA in a rather luxurious mansion, he was a bag of nerves, apparently. She rather less so. She said that the meeting was a little bit surreal, actually. I suppose it would be. Hey, Mum, here's a prince. But it went very well, and Harry has become extremely fond of Doria. She's been a close part of their lives pretty much ever since.
But Harry and Meghan didn't meet with her father, Thomas.
This is one of the great what-ifs of the whole saga. Why didn't Harry go to Mexico to meet him? Why didn't Meghan take him? Why didn't Harry insist before it all blew up? I mean, the whole thing was so avoidable, and I think Harry does have to take some responsibility for that.
Thomas was simply not part of these early meetings. She seemed, as she got closer and closer to Harry and a royal life, to be less and less inclined to rekindle her relationship with the Markle side of her family.
For a few months, Harry and Meghan were able to keep their relationship from the outside world. But eventually, their secret got out.
There weren't many that knew, only a very few friends. Then suddenly it got leaked to the press that Harry had a new girlfriend.
If you haven't read any of that coverage, she's Meghan Markle, the 35-year-old film and TV actress from California.
The world's press knew about it, and Harry knew more than anyone things were going to change.
Whilst Harry was used to intense media pressure, nothing could prepare Meghan and her family for the attention that followed.
After the relationship became public, there was a huge amount of interest in Meghan. Some of it was extremely negative.
There were things like that I think put a really bad taste in Harry and Meghan's mouth in terms of the underlying and even blatant racism.
With the glare of the world's media now upon both the Markles and the monarchy, questions were quickly asked as to how the relationship had reached the press.
When in a relationship or dating with a member of the royal family from the palace, it's not an easy thing to keep secret. Prince Harry's got his close protection and they're very discreet. But at the same time, there's other people who quite enjoy, can I say, a gossip.
In the case of the leak about Meghan and Harry's relationship, which Harry was said to be incandescent and furious about, was rumored to have come from someone in Prince Andrew's camp. I have no idea if that's the case, but what I can say is that there are so many leaks in the family. There were rumors about Harry's new girl, and he was madly in love, and those got out, and I don't think Harry was quite prepared for all of that when it happened.
The wave of intense media attention led Harry to take a public stand against the press. An explosive public statement from Harry was the first indication that the press were now on notice. He requested the media pause and reflect before any further damage is done.
The one thing the royals are meant to do is make sure that everyone is on the same page. And the fact is that the Prince of Wales was abroad on an official tour. Charles himself was only given a matter of moments to scan his son's statement, and there was a feeling that Harry had been thoughtless and that he should have consulted his father, he should have consulted his brother more, and there could have been a more measured response.
With Harry and Meghan's relationship now public, they focused on an important meeting behind palace walls.
Meeting your in-laws is always a bit of an ordeal, isn't it? And meeting your in-laws when one is going to be a future king, meeting Prince Charles, must have been quite tough for Meghan, or a little bit daunting. But she is a strong woman. She probably marched in there and just got on famously because she's a woman with lots of opinions, lots of views, and a confident woman. And those are the kind of attributes that Charles likes.
Charles famously adored Meghan. That first meeting went extraordinarily well. She was welcomed as a daughter, even more so than Kate Middleton was at the very beginning.
As well as charming Prince Charles, Meghan also had a very successful first meeting with the Queen.
The meeting went extremely well. It actually ran over, which is an extraordinary thing for the way the Queen keeps her schedule. Meghan was warmly welcomed. You know, here she is, articulate, bright, intelligent, well-spoken, beautiful, elegant. What's not to like?
Despite charming Harry's family, did Meghan find aspects of royal protocol stifling?
Meghan's first real reality check with how royal protocol works was when she was wearing a necklace with H&M on it and then told to remove it by senior courtiers because it might encourage the press.
To be told what to do, it must have been quite a shock. Any woman would kind of think, hang on, wait a minute. Someone telling me what to wear and which jewellery to wear? Excuse me.
She likes to have the freedom to do what she wants and when she wants. She wouldn't want to be told, you know, what to wear at any occasion.
You could look at this instance and say, was that the beginning of Meghan saying, I'm not going to have people like this controlling me?
Despite a whirlwind introduction to royal life, Meghan stood firm. And as the final preparations for the royal wedding were put in place, Meghan's mother Doria was introduced to the establishment's key players.
She was given VIP treatment. I suppose perhaps it was her first taste of being associated with royalty, you know, being whisked through security at Heathrow Airport. She was taken first to Clarence House to meet Charles and Camilla, and I think that went very well indeed.
Meeting all the royals, Kate, William, Charles, must have felt like royal speed dating. I've got to get to know everybody, I've got to form these connections really quickly.
Even the rather wonderfully confident Doria found, you know, fairly awesome actually meeting the Queen. Harry again had prepared his mother-in-law-to-be by saying, you know, she's my gran, try and think of her that way. Though I don't think many people think about the Queen that way.
While Doria was winning over the Windsors, another member of the Markle family was conspicuous in their absence.
It had been planned that Thomas Markle would have flown over and that he was going to walk Meghan down the aisle as father of the bride. However, it came to light that Thomas Markle had worked with a paparazzi photographer to stage photographs of him ahead of the wedding.
He was living in Mexico, surrounded by paparazzi. He tried to set up this deal with a photographer in the belief that they would then go away. Well, I'm afraid that just shows his naivety.
He found himself profoundly embarrassed. He thought he'd embarrassed the royal family, that he'd let down his beloved daughter, who he used to call Princess.
The stress of dealing with the press and the build-up to the big day took its toll on Thomas.
Just days before the wedding, he had a heart attack and had to go to hospital.
He had to have stents put in. By the time he emerged, he declared that he was not able to fly because of these procedures, and he pulled out of the wedding. And this was a huge drama on the eve of a wedding.
I mean, it's stressful enough marrying into the royal family, but to do it with all this scrutiny and this media frenzy and this scandal around your family, you know, the stress must have been unbearable.
Despite the frenzied build-up, Harry and Meghan's big day was finally upon them. But with her father unable to give her away, Meghan was left with a huge dilemma. And finding a solution, she broke with tradition, leaning on Harry's father, Prince Charles.
I thought it was the perfect embodiment, actually, of the modern woman, that she started out on her own, walked halfway down on her own, And then Charles joined her.
It looked right. It sort of gave us an idea of what Meghan was going to be like. It sort of declaration of independence, if you like, on her part. I don't need anyone to give me away. I'm a free person.
To the eyes of the world, Harry and Meghan's wedding had the flavour of a fairy tale.
We saw Idris Elba and George Clooney and Oprah, you know, walking in.
It was a star-spotting day. And she looked great. The bride looked fantastic. It was a wonderful day. I think everyone just thoroughly enjoyed it. And you just felt a sense of true welcome of this young bride into the royal fold.
Meghan wanted it to be right. She wanted it to be perfect. Forget the red carpets in Hollywood. This was something else.
Just days after their wedding, the new Duke and Duchess of Sussex was seen at their first official engagement, a garden party at Buckingham Palace.
This one actually was a little bit special because the theme was Prince Charles's 70th birthday. And that must have been extraordinary for Meghan.
From the first instance, the Queen had implored upon the Windsor family to embrace Meghan. Not only because she was a person of colour and someone from an international country, but that she had this charm about her.
Everything seemed so, I know, magical, hunky-dory after the wedding. We got this wonderful new mixed heritage, modern woman as part of the royal family, such a symbol of the monarchy moving with the times. And then it all got a bit soured, a bit tarnished by Meghan's family piping up again and again.
It's so good to have a role model or someone that you look up to, but oftentimes when it's someone who looks like you or comes from where you come from, it's easier to connect and see it in a different way.
Meghan was used to cameras and publicity, but really nothing can prepare someone for entering the most famous family in the world. And I think even she admits she was taken aback by it.
As Meghan was starting her new life, her father felt he was no longer part of it.
It was extraordinary that Meghan's dad did like a press tour in the days after the wedding, putting forward his side of things. It can't have been very easy for Meghan to watch her dad on television, publicly disputing her side of the story or her version of events.
If you think about a father-daughter dynamic, and this is an intimate family space, so there are now three of them. It's Meghan, it's Thomas, and it's the media.
I do have sympathy for Thomas Markle. This was a guy who had never been a celebrity, had never courted fame and being a celebrity, who was thrust into a national spotlight with zero support.
As her deteriorating relationship with her father continued to play out in the press, Meghan became centre stage in the royal family.
Once you're in the family firm, you are put to work, and I covered their first big tour in the autumn, which was Australia, New Zealand, Fiji and Tonga. It was relentless, but you know, they were the most famous couple in the world, and the world wanted to see them.
Then a surprise announcement by the couple wrong-footed the royal press pack, signalling that from now on they were determined to do things their way.
The palace press officials were there going through the itinerary, and at the end of that, the British royal correspondents were called into a corner and we were told, oh, and by the way, she's pregnant. And it's like, what?
It was massive news and strange timing, but I think Harry and Meghan made that announcement because who knows, in those early stages of pregnancy, she might have suddenly felt that that tour was going to be a bit hardcore and she'd need time off.
As Meghan and Harry prepared to start a family of their own, wider members of the Markle family began selling stories to the tabloid press.
Meghan's half-siblings, Thomas Jr. and Samantha, just seemed incapable of keeping quiet at this point. They, every other week, it seemed, they came out with some more very cruel criticism of their half-sister.
The fact that none of them had been invited to the wedding clearly rankled hugely. You know, Meghan's answer to that was that they played very little part in her life.
The couple themselves were under increasing pressure in the media. Now the £2.4 million renovations to Frogmore Cottage came to the fore.
Harry and Meghan took any kind of criticism very personally, and none more so than the debate over the renovations to Frogmore Cottage.
Frogmore Cottage is not a cottage. It's quite a few different buildings that they've knocked through, spent a lot of taxpayers' money on renovating it.
Harry took grave exception to this idea that they were lavishing public money on something which was unnecessary. And it did feed into the narrative, as far as he was concerned, that the press was somehow being highly critical of every motive and everything they did.
Meghan's mother, Doria, could only watch on as her daughter struggled with the criticism and harsh media spotlight.
There's no doubt in my mind from what we can see that Meghan has a really close relationship with her mother. Somebody who would always, have her back, speak truth to her, and, help her make the kind of choices that she needs to make.
It must be difficult for any mother to see her daughter being splashed over the papers for things that she might not want to be in the papers, but ultimately you can't control the press. It's a beast of its own.
But on the 6th of May 2019, Meghan and Harry were able to share some happy news. Meghan gave birth to a baby boy, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. Archie was now 7th in line to the throne after his father.
Mother and baby are doing incredibly well. It's been the most amazing experience I could ever possibly imagine.
Archie would be part of the bloodlines of a storied family with hundreds of years of history behind it.
I think the Queen had high hopes for them being, great brand ambassadors for the royal family.
Harry and Meghan made it clear they wanted it to be different kind of royals. They wanted to engage more. They clearly wanted to have close links with young people. I think the Queen seized on that with alacrity.
Harry and Meghan were enormously popular, and I think everyone thought this was the cementing of the future of the monarchy. There was going to be these two young couples, William and Catherine, Harry and Meghan, taking it forward.
In September 2019, the new family embarked on a tour of Southern Africa. On the surface, they seemed happier than ever.
You have given us so much inspiration, so much hope, and above all, you have given us joy. Thank you.
But in reality, they felt under pressure. In a revealing interview for an ITV documentary, Meghan dropped a bombshell.
Yeah, well, I guess, and also thank you for asking, because not many people have asked if I'm okay, but it's a very real thing to be going through behind the scenes.
Remember, at this point, she's had an absolute beating from the press on a sort of daily basis. She's had this horrible fallout with her father. She's also a new mother as well, and you can just see the sort of weight on her shoulders.
Her mother would have been heartbroken that her daughter was experiencing all of this.
The interview seemed to mark a sea change in the once happy relationship between Harry, Meghan, and the rest of the royal family.
One of the rules of being a member of the royal family is you never complain about anything. So I think that they would have been furious. And the sad thing is, I think, she was just being honest about how she felt, but that interview probably made things about 100 times worse in terms of already frosty relations.
Harry and Meghan were now fighting battles on multiple fronts.
I think someone like Meghan, who's always been very outspoken, would have struggled very much with not being able to comment and put out her version of events. This is not what happens in Hollywood. Meghan couldn't do that as a member of the royal family, and that would have been maddening for her.
Hello. Their ongoing battle with the media came to a head in February 2019, when excerpts of a private letter sent from Meghan to her father were published in the British press.
This letter was such a watershed moment, and I think this was the point at which, this was the straw that broke the camel's back, and they announced that they were going to fight back and that they were taking legal action against associated newspapers.
Meghan believes that her privacy has been invaded, that she has the copyright over those letters, and Thomas Markle believes the opposite.
In the wake of their legal action against a section of the British press, Harry and Meghan announced they were taking a 6-week break from royal duties and heading to Canada to spend Christmas with Doria.
What you do sometimes psychologically for yourself is you remove yourself from a situation that you find difficult and painful and put yourself in a space that you feel might be more nurturing and safe and secure.
Christmas is a very, very important part in the Queen's calendar. She likes to draw her family around her.
Christmas at Sandringham is quite a formal affair. So it must have been great for Harry and Meghan to have the informality of a Christmas in Canada.
Doria could not be further away from the stuffiness of the senior members of the royal family.
Although the festivities may have been relaxed, were decisions about the growing divide between Harry, Meghan and the monarchy being considered in Canada.
I suspect that Meghan uses her mother a great deal as a source of wisdom and advice. I'd be astonished if during that time both she and Harry, no doubt, hadn't spoken about the fact that they actually wanted to step back as senior royals.
They wanted an exit strategy from the royal family. Doria and Meghan are extremely close. She missed her mum and she wanted Doria to be very much part of the family unit.
When Harry and Meghan returned to Britain in January 2020, they made a shock announcement.
In a statement released in the last few minutes, they say they intend to step back as senior members of the royal family and work to become financially independent.
The royal firm had been here before.
It was an electric moment in royal history. Diana had essentially left the royal family, and before her, Fergie, Edward VIII, left the royal family. He abdicated. Leaving the royal family is possible, but it's messy.
Initially, it was a sort of a geographical split. They would be moving to Canada. They would come to Britain to do engagements when it suited them.
The tabloids dubbed their decision as Megxit, and it sent shockwaves through the royal family.
Harry, I'm sure, he felt, he was freeing himself, but for his father and brother and grandmother, it probably felt like an act of vandalism against the monarchy. They would have been both furious, but equally heartbroken as well.
Away from the royal family, Meghan's supportive mother Doria treated the announcement with the utmost discretion.
I think Doria has acted in the most regal way in all of this, because the royal way is to don't complain and don't explain. And that's exactly what Doria did.
The Queen issued a statement that outlined a transition period to allow Harry and Meghan to step back from their roles as senior members of the royal family.
The Queen's statement was obviously very much from her heart, but at the same time, it was very clean cut. This is how it is. You're out. It's as simple as that.
In January 2020, Harry, Meghan and Archie left behind their royal life and home at Frogmore Cottage for a new life abroad.
For Prince Harry, it was a big decision because he's leaving his friends, his family.
He felt he had to get his family out of Britain. He felt so angry and hurt about the press and about the institution of the monarchy.
After a brief stay in Canada, Meghan and Harry settled in Santa Barbara in California, a familiar, glitzy surrounding for Meghan.
Meghan and Harry live in Montecito, which is a very posh, fancy enclave. I happened to live there for 4 years. It's very private. We know that Oprah is a neighbor, Katy Perry and Orlando Bloom. They all live nearby. Montecito residents are very protective of their own. They won't talk about Harry and Meghan much to the press, and I should know because I've tried.
She wanted to be around the place she knew. Meghan didn't know hardly anyone here in the UK, and it can be a very lonely place in the palace. She didn't want that life. She wanted to be free.
They reportedly bought their 9-bed, 16-bath mansion for £11.2 million. They've seamlessly slipped into the Californian lifestyle, a million miles away from the Windsors' world.
Their friends are not going to be members of the aristocracy with wonderful estates in Scotland to shoot grouse on, but Hollywood and a celebrity culture. Oprah Winfrey's a friend of Meghan and Meghan's mother. They're friends with the Clooneys. They're making connections all over Tinseltown.
The move has only deepened the divide between Harry and Meghan and the monarchy. Meghan's mother Doria is now just a 90-minute drive away, a stark contrast to over 5,000 miles from the Windsors.
Harry loves Charles. You know, they clearly have a strong bond, and now they are literally not as close as they used to be. I think they are staying in touch over Skype and Zoom, but it's not the same, is it? I'm sure it pains Charles that he will not have an active role in the upbringing of Archie.
Harry seems to have an absolutely brilliant relationship with Doria. There's no doubt that Meghan and Doria are closer geographically, physically, and perhaps emotionally as well than they ever have been.
Doria apparently enjoys feeding wee Archie organic food, and she's also a trained yoga instructor as well. So I have these visions of them doing baby yoga together. So I think he's definitely a very cool, hippie Californian baby.
But could Harry and Meghan's plan to build their brand and become financially independent from the Windsors push the families even further apart? Their biggest and perhaps most lucrative signing is with Netflix, rumoured to be worth over £100 million.
Effectively, the money that they are being paid is because of their platform as royalty, as members of the royal family. And that's quite tricky. People always want the most compulsive viewing and the things that are going to command the most column inches, and effectively that then translates into dollars. Are those personal and intimate revelations?
I think that there were people who truly wished them well, but of course there were also people who wanted to poke, holes into their love affair and bring out as much dirt as they could. I think they found a way to say, you know what, enough is enough. We refuse to be pillars of abuse.
The Queen is delighted by the birth of a daughter to the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Lilibet Diana Mountbatten Windsor, who'll be known as Lily, was born on Friday in California. She's been named in tribute to both her great-grandmother, the Queen, and her grandmother, Princess Diana.
There's a new baby, which is amazing news, but I think that is going to, in some respects, draw them further apart. They're going to spend most of their time in the US, and they want to make their life there.
The chances of the newborn reaching England in the foreseeable future is next to zero, and one must sympathise with the Queen. That's disheartening and heartbreaking.
Increasingly, one wonders how much influence the royal family will even have. The royals are going to become distant relatives, I suspect.
A year on from the bombshell announcement that Harry and Meghan would be moving away from the royal family, they made it clear they would be staying in California.
Harry and Meghan's exit from the royal family ended today as it began, with considerable acrimony.
Buckingham Palace confirmed that the couple would be stripped of all their honorary titles and royal patronages, including Harry's military titles and Meghan's role as Vice President of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust.
I think Harry wanted it both ways. He wanted to be able to live a life free of responsibility, but still make change. And the reality was, the Sussexes in another country are isolated from what everything the royal family means. And that puts the royal family at peril. So the Queen had no choice but to strip them of the titles.
Harry and Meghan shot an intimate tell-all television interview with their friend and broadcast legend, Oprah Winfrey. Then in the days building up to the broadcast, newspapers claimed that Meghan now faced a serious bullying complaint against her whilst at Kensington Palace. Her spokesperson said that she was saddened by the reports. Relations appeared to have finally hit rock bottom.
The $6 million question, though, is just how far Meghan is going to go. The full truth, as she sees it, would be highly explosive, but it would certainly burn all bridges with the institution she has left behind.
In the interview, new revelations exposed the strained relationship between Meghan, Harry, and the monarchy.
I expect this interview not only to reverberate through the United States and England, but to rock the establishment at its very core.
What began as a breath of fresh air cascaded into a series of family conflicts, controversies, and trouble for Harry and Meghan and the monarchy.
These are family stories that are complicated, run deep. If people feel very hurt and betrayed, and they feel that this relationship is broken beyond repair, then that might be the reality.
I think that in the initial stage, there was a fairy tale about this, but that fairy tale was quickly shattered.
She was ready to do what it takes to be, to be a wife for Harry, and to be a member of the royal family that the country can be proud of. But I personally don't think that wanting to be a member of the family should cost you your independence or independent thought.
I think it's a real lost opportunity for the royal family that they couldn't make it work, that Meghan couldn't become an integral part of the future of the monarchy. The monarchy could be seen to be so much more inclusive, modern, moving with the times, evolving. I think it is extremely sad.